So before FanFest, I want to talk about my own speculations for the brand new melee DPS job, because honestly, people asked for my take on it, and I am many weeks late, but I'm actually pretty comfortable with my speculations and the opinion I formed, and honestly, we've only had more new information, in my opinion, put in that really kind of solidified where I'm at. So let's put that confirmation bias aside, because I know that that is definitely a thing, and let's just have fun with this. So the only tangible fact that we really know is that this new melee DPS will be sharing gear sets with Dragoon. And that is where confirmed information stops. Where it moves further from that, though, is Yoshi P's shirts, and widely these shirts have been used to convey future job details, and so it's hard to imagine them not being relevant in this case as well. Looking at past examples, we had Spider-Man shirt, which translated into Samurai from the director's name Sam Raimi, which was a bit less obvious than the other shirt for Red Mage, which was showcasing the Scarlet Witch Scarlet for Red, and Witch for Mage, Red Mage, or Bugs Bunny for Viera. Rest in peace, male Viera, though. Or maybe not if we get a good announcement during Showcase. Fingers crossed. But let's talk about the current shirts and the current hints that are, in my opinion, headed to a more clear zone and more readily obvious, similar to the Scarlet Witch for the Red Mage. I feel that it's a little bit more overt, and I think that there's a lot of really deep thinking that would actually really surprise me at this point. But maybe that'll become more clear why I feel this way as I explore my thoughts. My thoughts. I'm just keeping that in there. So all three t-shirts are from different rock bands. Let's start with Children of Bodom. Honestly, it takes an extremely surface level view to go to their discography on Wikipedia and see an immediate set of what a more cynical me would call confirmation biases. Or song names. I see two themes emerge already based on prior game mechanics: Something Wild, Follow the Reaper, Hate Crew, Death Roll, Are You Dead Yet, and Relentless Reckless Forever all immediately strike to me as they could hint at form of like zombies, necromancer summons. It sounds very like very minion, very zombie and very deathy. And we have seen parallels in a few forms, like Machinist summons their big robot, for example, which is based off of a huge builder and then spender energy gauge. Summer has their edge eye, Eggy, I'm supposed to say Eggy. Scholar has their pets as well. We've also seen the Necromancer dungeon boss use a legion of corpses for various effects like roots and AoE damage, and we have also seen Necromancy through so many different things, like various different dungeons, like what was it, the Dusk Vigil, that was definitely with Sir Yulmeric Necromancy through the roof. Next up, I see Life Force Siphoning, starting with the song name Hate Breeder, which Hate Breeder is significant, and I want to explore this a bit to convey my thoughts. Final Fantasy Type 0 has a character named Sice that uses a huge scythe. Props to my sister for correcting me on saying Sice to cease, which may in and of itself, that scythe gameplay, be exciting to us because in Final Fantasy XIV we are already very familiar with combos. But what she does have is a unique ability to absorb the hatred of enemies, which is something that can build up that enhances her abilities. The article I'm citing even states her basic attacks and a dark nebula area of effect ability gets impacted by this. And so something like Hate Breeder instantly clicked in my mind as, oh, you're trying to breed and build up that hate. Perhaps the hate is siphoned off as Aether or Life Force, which we have seen a similar idea behind in the Red Mage questlines, where Lambard could siphon the energies directly from another through a physical cut. The user, however, was starved of Aether and had to feed consistently off of the Aether of others. But anymore, and I'm getting super spoilery, I do feel like songs like Blood Drunk, to be drunken off of the built up hate as some kind of a self buff, might be a possible mechanic, or Halo of Blood sounds to me like an area of effect spender from the siphoned gauge. Now let's talk about No Comment, which is another band. A lot of people just wrote the shirt off as like, oh, he means like, oh, I'm not making any comment, until he changed his shirt. This is actually a band, and in my mind this is actually a huge comment, this shirt. In Final Fantasy XIV, new players sadly might not be aware Palace of the Dead even exists, let alone have tried it, which to me is a little super sad because it is fantastic content that I do recommend for everyone to give at least a shot. And honestly, a lot of people totally miss a very certain NPC called Edda who makes appearances in Palace of the Dead, and Tamtara Deep Hard mode. And so, honestly, though, just as a quick plug for Palace of the Dead, because I brought it up, if you have played World of Warcraft, think about it as like Torghast, but fun, with a solid reward structure and challenge, good leveling, and the Necromancer title at the end if you clear it solo, which is extremely rare, and so definitely worth getting if you are looking for a very flashy achievement. And yes, I said Necromancer title, and I wanted to specify that very clearly because we're diving into that zone here with Necromancy. But point is, anyone who did Palace of the Dead can't escape the fact that we ran into Edda Pureheart, whose story is extremely sad and in-depth and worth checking out, but for our purposes, I'm going to summarize as a young girl who's in love, and her love is killed, and according to like group members of hers, it's her fault. She's a bad healer. It's all her fault, and she turns into like going necromancy and dark arts to try and revive her love, which leads her into troubling places like Palace of the Dead and Tamtara Deepcroft Hard. She is by and large a necromancer of at least some stature. In Tamtara Deepcroft, the first boss, Livian, will spawn unwilling corpses, best man summons, and then kind of explodes them against her will. For all intents and purposes, she has been turned into a flesh puppet, which is being wielded by Edda. Not to mention that through the entire dungeon, if you pay attention to the scattered folio lore, that you can see that there's a separation between body and soul. I'm noticing as I'm reading these, bodies and souls, two separate things. Once again, this is kind of going in my mind all together as we're getting something akin to the machinist gauge, with one of those bars being body and the other being like soul, or at least two core mechanics revolving around building and spending, like bodies and soul. And in the battle in Tamtara Deepcroft with Edda and Avere, before he's given a body, she is also spawning Groom to be and using them to build up an extremely powerful AoE attack that would probably have wiped a lot of groups back in the day, honestly. Edda is later seen with a scythe weapon in Palace of the Dead. In my opinion, though, a lot of her attacks really look like they could be potential life force builder spenders, especially with this scythe. Not to mention that the scythe really keeps being brought up as a consistent weapon, even in the Children of Bodom t-shirt. It's interesting to me because the Necromancer from Shadowbringer's dungeon is using a staff and isn't attacking with it like melee would with a scythe, so I do find that actually pretty interesting. But before I leave Edda discussion, I cannot possibly have been the only one that made the immediate connection between the Moogle Treasure Festival for FanFest with the Moogle Tomestones of Pageantry having literally an Edda model sitting on an Avere. I can't be the only one. Or the obviously upset NPC duo there. And I mean, yeah, they're like shivering, but they look visibly upset in the way that it was captured. Now, call me crazy if you want, but when I think FanFest, one of the last things that I think of is dead necromancies riding their dead husbands and upset, clearly uncomfortable characters. If this isn't blasting it in our ears that the melee DPS has these themes in it, I'd be very curious if they were just intentionally trolling at this point. Possible, but I'm going to go off with the assumption they're not just trolling us. But now let's cycle back to the band No Comment in their songs, what got us here in the first place. After all, that's why I even mentioned her in the first place, Edda. You could argue that this pure-hearted girl was soiled by hate, that Avere has a dead stare for life, that Avere was by all means a guinea pig, because if he was dead, how could he have possibly consented to be brought forth into this void form and for, I assume, his also mutual love to be doing this. It's crazy. He's been turned into like a guinea pig. And honestly, this could all be one bad idea, hence the song In the Name of Stupidity. Community slugs honestly could refer to how badly Edda was treated by her former group and other people, as could human scum. Honestly, even Dead Stare for Life clearly reminds me of the Avere mount with the extremely freaky dead-eyed stare. Confirmation bias o'clock? Yeah, but I do feel that this is a really strong pattern, so I'm gonna let that slide. Now onto the last band, Neighbourhood, which was a bit harder for me personally to establish a real pattern. I'm likely missing something here, I'm gonna be honest, but what I did pick for sure was that there were more Edda and Avere themes with Afraid, Scary Love, Crybaby, and If You Get Me So High, A Little Death, and a few others. And then there were also some necromancy themes with Stuck With Me, Prey, Wires, especially Wires. Disturbingly enough, maybe even Baby Came Home. I mean, with Edda and Avere. I mean, yeah. One particular song stuck out to me because it was actually one that I listened to a lot way back in the day, Wires, and I feel that it is actually extremely appropriate here. This song is going to be speaking about, just to summarize the lyrics, the singer basically made it through something and someone else not making it. That the person that was defeated, now they have like wires stringing through them, and the wires are controlling their jaw, their breathing. The wires are even getting older, as mentioned in there. In the Necromancer context, it makes nothing short of infinite sense if we really let our imagination run wild. I mean, why not replace wires with Aether? Bam. Necromancer. Heck, honestly, let's not even like forget that necromancy has been a part of Final Fantasy XIV since the days of Eld. Even in lower level maps across all city-states, there are dead walking around. Gridania is even at the insanely low level of 13. So to say necromancy hasn't been completely covered by the lore endgame would be an incredible lie. It's been everywhere, basically, even in a huge range of dungeons like Dusk Vigil, which is huge on necromancy. Sir Eumelric being one great example. Brain Drain summoning minions, big death spiral doing AoE. I feel like I'm being repetitive, but that sounds like two separate gauges, like I kept talking about before, like the necromancer bodies, the zombies, and then the like soul, the hate gauge that's really being brought up, the body and the soul. So kind of to sum this up, what do I think we're actually going to see based on this? In my opinion, we're going to see a melee DPS job that is likely based around temporary summons. I don't think it'll be persistent pet. I would be surprised through certain cooldowns and life siphoning, which that is going to just be like a basic builder. However, being realistic, I don't think that there will be any scenario where we're going to have any actual body required, since that would honestly make raiding as the job literally so difficult. It would be very, 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 very brutal to bring them along, so I don't see there being any, oh, there's a body on the ground, let me summon it. I can't see that. So we might go, in terms of the job utility, how this would be implemented would be more the way of Unholy Death Knight, where you don't really ask questions on where that body came from, but hey, we just got a swarm of all these ghouls. Hey, I just turned my other ghoul into something bigger. Hey, I just spent all my cooldowns on this, and this is really cool. We just swarmed them with an army of the dead. I don't ask questions. And now the life siphoning aspect with the builder comes, in my opinion, from Sice's toolkit, where through executing proper combos, we drain the life force and contain it in ourselves, which honestly is very flavorful, but it's something we see a lot. Even Machinist, when they do their 1-2-3 combo, like Heated Clean Shot is building 10 energy. We've seen something like that already, so I really don't think it would be hard to imagine a world where we get that builder spender. But I want to kind of talk a little bit about the weapon though. While people may say that they are confident on the weapon, doing this search found Necromancy could come with a host of weapons and flavors. Staff from 5.4's dungeon. That was the staff. Sword and shield with Sir Eumelric from Dusk Vigil. Bow with Liviane. Staff with Edda before she eventually goes to a scythe. Or Lambard from the Red Mage questlines with his rapier as he is siphoning the energies and life forces. So in terms of the weapon, I actually have no clue, and I might actually be a little shocked if it is a scythe. Only because it's so obvious. I mean, on one hand, it would be like, oh, I'm not surprised. On the other hand, it would be like, that was so obvious that I am a little surprised. I also feel, though, that since it shares gear with the Dragoon, that a scythe and a spear, while they are certainly different weapons, might be way too similar, because it's like a scythe and a spear. Are they going to be kind of similar? I mean, I understand that functionally they wielded differently, but I just see the swinging motions being similar, and then the Dragoons are going to ult with that. I don't know, it just, in my brain, it's just too similar. But on the other hand, Sice, who I do feel will have themes show up, did use a scythe, and so it's very possible. So who knows? I don't. Anyhow, these are just my thoughts and opinions, and please let me know what yours are and what you think in the comments. In less than a day from now, we are going to know so much information, and I'm super hyped. Anyhow, take care everyone and enjoy FanFest.